Monday
Good morning, right? Is it morning still?
It's still, no, it's not. I thought
it just
was.
turned over. It must be 12 something.
12:37.
Man.
Missed it. Ooh.
When you have meetings and you get up and it's
Yep.
one thing after the next. I don't know what time it is.
And
I never know what time it is.
We were all a little slow getting in here this morning because of the Fall Fest.
Fall Fest.
Yesterday,
Yeah, that was awesome.
Was really
many
fun.
people just having such a great time,
Yep.
man.
Yep.
You know?
And my arms are kind of sore. I don't know if you saw me. At one point, I had 2 cornhole boards and Charlie on, and I'm just a little...
Oh, just trying to carry...
I was carrying stuff that... And I haven't carried a lot of weight for...
That's hilarious.
A while now.
That is funny,
so
man.
I'm a little sore. But it was good. It was a really good day.
It's a good day, man.
Yep.
Good day, good morning at church, and a good time for our church in the afternoon and our community and neighborhoods, and coming out. And I guess your coffee says it all. You usually don't have a big giant Wawa coffee, and it's 12:30.
A very large one,
like,
and it's the second time through it.
Oh, nice,
ooh,
nice,
yeah,
man. One of those days.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yep. We've been doing a lot of restoring of things at our house also. So we've been doing some projects.
It's a good word. It's a good word. Yeah, I just talked about yesterday.
A smooth transition into restore.
Yeah,
which was our topic yesterday.
And it's funny you say that about your house, though. A lot of people go through that and do some kind of restoration, especially if it's a historic home or older, and you want to restore something. I talked about it in terms of a car. But when you actually look at, let's say, Oxford Dictionary or something like that, it's going to say to return to your former and better self, or a former and better self.
Yeah.
So it's like something was good a long time ago. It got broken down, wrecked, rusted, run down, whatever.
Yeah.
And you want to bring it back to that a better place than it is now.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a better place than it was when it was brand new, but it's going to be a better place than it was now. And that's the whole point.
Right. It is. And I think speaks so much to the gospel.
Yeah.
Which is why it's a thread through all of the Bible, but speaks so much to, God's design for our lives was one thing, and then it broke. And the reality became another thing. And so he's restoring us.
That's right.
Not to perfection yet, because we're not there, but we can
that's a good point
reach restoration here.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
You said he's bringing us back to that former, better, whatever, the better place. And he's doing that work. I mean, he's literally doing that work inside of us, around us, bringing us to that restored place. But you just brought up something that I didn't mention yesterday.
Yeah.
That eventually, when we go to heaven, we will be restored to our true self.
Yeah.
Of how we were meant and created to be, which kind of is mind-blowing.
Like, because we don't even know exactly what that looks like.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
And that I'm not even just talking about spiritually in some kind of spiritual holy. I'm saying you're going to be exactly what God created you to be, with no flaw, no like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't even describe it because it's hard for me to understand it.
Yeah.
But it's all the work of Jesus, and we come to this perfection place.
It's true.
And we worship God, and we hang out with Jesus, and it's like, what?
And there's no chance of fully exploring this topic right now, but it talks about in the New Testament how who we are now is like a seed to
that's right.
a tree compared to what we are
100%.
now to what our new complete restored bodies will be in eternity. So like when you see a tree versus a seed, it's really hard to tell that it came from some, so man. We have no idea what it's going to look like, but the restoration
it's going to be amazing.
Whew.
But he's doing stuff now.
Yeah.
And that was the whole point of yesterday. He's doing stuff now. And to me, that's a really hopeful thing.
Yes, it is.
To many people, and in times in my life, it's a very hard thing. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was the whole illustration of the truck in the beginning, trucks, where it's like,
Yeah, because there are a lot of times that we have to be totally undone before we can because we got some rust over here behind this nut or bolt, and then there's like some dirt over here in between these two parts, and to get to them, sometimes like the Lord's really got to totally undo us.
Man.
And
because we'll never get to that.
Like there's no rhyme or reason to what's going on, right? I think
right.
It can feel like all of my pieces, the pieces of me are just scattered all over the ground and make no sense right now.
Yeah.
But the creator of the car, or like when you're taking a car apart, you know how to put it back together, and you know what to put where and how it's gonna come back together, shiny with its intended purpose restored, right?
Yeah.
And that's what God's doing for us. It was a great metaphor for our lives.
I don't like that process, and I don't know a lot of people that do. When he starts digging in.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, you didn't think you had a problem with this, or you thought you were good in this area.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to take this last bolt off so that the wheel will fall off.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
all of a sudden.
God, I was looking for paint so that I can look good. Mm-hmm. Right? And he's like,
yep.
And like I said yesterday, you'll break down. You're never going to be able to endure what you were created to do and get from A to B with paint.
It's true. I mean, you think about like a house, like a restoration project at a house. You can slap some paint on the wall, but that's only going to cover up the fact that there's a mold issue. You know, eventually it's going to come through this.
That's exactly right.
It's never going to
100%
stay hidden. I mean, that's it. It warns against whitewashed walls, right?
Yeah.
Jesus warns against whitewashed walls. He's like,
because it looks good.
You got to do more work than just cover up what's going on the surface. Let's
look good on the outside, and that's always a temptation for us, self-preservation, you know, and it's always a temptation. But, you know, he does this work. He digs in. I talked about digging into the areas of our life where we are contradicting what God wants for us, that's sin, the areas in our life where we're apathetic, where we just don't care, and we're just like, I don't need that.
I thought I thought that was huge, because you know what my other thought was in that point was how apathetic can we sometimes get about following God?
Yes, like, that's what I mean.
I find myself so often like, okay, I'm gonna study the Bible today, and then I'm gonna pray before dinner, and you know, say a prayer at night, like wake me up in the morning, please. And then you just kind of are doing your routine, and you lose the wonder of it, and just kind of become apathetic to the process.
Yeah, and just like, okay, that's fine, that's good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And God, that's why the whole word for restore, and when we were talking about apathy, was that awaken. Because he's got to do that work to awaken us.
Yeah.
And maybe that is that he needs us to change our routine.
Right.
You know, in how we meet with him and when and whatever the case might be, to restore that. But often it's and always it's the work of the Spirit to just revive something in us to say, you know what, there's more to this, and I just forgot. Yeah. You know, or whatever.
It's true. When the last couple points you made about discouragement and regret.
Yeah.
Those two things stood out a lot to me, I think, because they often are things that we kind of want to just paint over, right? Because those are a little more painful, and we like to keep them a little more hidden. But the discouragement that we sometimes find ourselves in, or the regret that we find ourselves experiencing, the fact that those things can be restored is a wonderful gift. Yeah. But to step into that gift, we have to acknowledge that they exist in our lives in the first place, right?
And that's, okay, when we're discouraged and we don't admit that, okay, I can just suck it up, I can just move on, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's how we deal with it sometimes, and sometimes that's necessary. But here's the thing, when we notice it, we don't often stop and ask, okay, let's really, really, really look at why.
Yeah.
And if you have somebody like a counselor exploring that, they don't just let you stop. Well, man, I had a bad day. Why'd you have a bad day?
Yeah.
Well, here's what happened. These things fell apart. Okay, why did it make you go to that place?
Yeah.
well, then they start talking about, well, a couple of years ago, you had some trauma or something like that was like, and it all is good to notice.
Yes.
But that's why we need restoring, because it's deeper than just, driving to work and something happened to the car and it's like, okay, no, that's not discouragement. That's frustration. It's like, nah, man, I can't believe that happened.
Yeah.
But why did it get to that level?
Yeah.
And we ask that question, why, and we let God into that.
Yeah.
Then he begins to do all right, you just need to take these bearings out of this truck, and we're going to repack them, and we're going to put it back in, you know?
When I think sometimes the battle can become like God has to restore us from the apathy we feel or live in order to do the work to be restored from the discouragement and the guilt.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking recently the heat went out in our Jeep. And to solve that problem, we could have done like a quick fix. There could have been like, you can get your hand in and like move the internal piece.
Okay.
To, like, switch it over. But then it would just always be hot, right? Or we could spend the time to like maneuver the little intricate parts and get the new part plugged into the right spot so that it'll move the arm when I actually turn the wheel.
Yeah.
Which is ideal.
Yeah.
But you got to get all the way up in there.
And it takes time.
Yes.
And effort.
Yep.
And even money and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're right. You just kind of solved the problem, but you created another one.
Right.
Instead of really. Yeah.
Because it's going to be summertime again. We don't want it to be hot for the rest of forever.
No. But discouragement, like I said yesterday, there's so many opportunities for us to be discouraged, and life can be very, very, very hard.
Yes.
And I always look around and like, man, they got it worse than me. But that doesn't mean I won't feel discouragement either about things. And it's like, that's what I'm trying to say is when we notice it, it's good, because then we give the opportunity for God to work in that.
Right.
And then he shows us all the passages we read yesterday about him lifting us up.
Yeah.
And letting his presence come into our life. And just being the God who says, I will lift your head. You're downcast.
Yeah.
And that's related to being the lifter of our heads.
Yeah.
That's the Hebrew term for, know, those two words are related. The downcast, you're looking down, you're just like, what?
Well, no, that was something that stood out to me yesterday. I'm looking through the list, and this, I know, made it a challenge to teach this message and preach through it, because so many different Hebrew and Greek words became the word restore in English. So we got renew, return, awaken, revive, breathe new life, fix, mend, set right, heal, bring together, reconcile, harmonize, ascend, lift up. There's so many words.
It's really interesting, isn't it?
Get brought into this concept of restoration.
Yeah. Which is interesting because we in the English language have that word. They didn't have that word necessarily, so they had to explain it through other words.
Yep.
Gives us a really rich understanding of what that whole thing means,
Yeah. And I think something we should make sure that we touch on is it's not just us that needs restoring, right? The world around us also. And you touched on that with the word regret.
Yeah.
Like, there are things that I do that may cause regret.
Yeah, that's right.
But there are also things that happen around us. I regret the hurricane that tore through North Carolina and Tennessee in the South a little bit ago. Like, massive regret about that because it was awful. There was no human did that, It's just a world circumstance that we regret.
You bring up a good point, and I think that's what we're trying to differentiate, that most of the time when we use the word regret, it has landed in one category, and that is I did something wrong, whether sinful or just I made a huge mistake that wasn't sin. It was just I just made a mistake. You know what I mean? And the whole project fell apart because of my mistake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It can also be somebody else's sin done to us.
Yep.
But it can also be the brokenness of this world. And we have to understand it in those three categories, because regret is really about sadness and disappointment and repentance.
Right.
But man, when we live in that, and we say, and especially when we do the wrong thing, we live in that, and we can't let it go, and we can't change it.
Yeah.
So the only one that can make something good out of something bad is the God who can restore it.
Yep.
And that's the truth that is so hard to grasp.
Yeah, it is hard. It is really hard. But once you grasp it and once you wrap your mind around it, it kind of goes back through the list and kind of helps solve all of those other things, like once you grasp it, there's hope in the discouragement, and there's energy in the apathy, and those
That's
things
it.
like that concept of God is working in all of the things, any of the sin that is either in us, happening to us, or happening around us, God's restoring it.
That's right.
There's
That's
a
exactly
solution
right.
to everything else that we could find ourselves in.
And we can live in that. I had somebody ask me one time, I was like, yeah, man, I really regret that. And then I brought it up again weeks later or something like that. And they're like, why can't you just let go of it and learn from it and say, you know what, regret? You've taught me something that I will not do again. And now we're done with it. I'm done with you. I'm done with it. You would think it would be that easy. Now, with God bringing the restoration and really understanding what it means to let him have the past or whatever is going on, we can say, okay, I can only move forward. So now let me use that to shape my forward. And it really helps. But God's the only one that can really give us the absolute ability to do that. It's there's like techniques, but
peace kind of to rest in.
Well, you just said the word that
make peace. Look at that.
In regret. That's the word that they use for restore is make peace and complete. Man, But he wants to bring that to us, and he uses all these different ways, and he is that involved in our lives that the restoration is multifaceted, which is what we talked about yesterday. And can bring us to that complete place and that place of maturity in him.
Well, this has been a really good series of all of the threads through.
It's been challenging personally as well. People don't realize that when I'm in study, Tuesday's often my study day where I'm really deep into it. A good part of that day is like, oh, Lord, man, this is really challenging me. And so I'm trying to process it. I'm trying to process this. You know what I mean? But he loves us. That's why he's doing it.
Well, also congrats on your first full official series after your sabbatical.
It kind of was like an official 6-weeker, man.
It's been a good one.
You're right.
Been a good one.
Thanks.
But so we'll be back here. We're starting. We've got All Praise on Sunday.
Can't wait. Love that, man.
Just come. Sundays.
Just let it happen, man. You know what I mean? That's gonna be awesome. I'll see you there.
Can't wait.
All right.
Let's do it.
Enjoy your third cup of coffee.
I will.
See you guys.